Welcome to the Lazy Girl's Guide to Podcasting. If you want effective and actionable tips to simplify the overwhelm of launching and managing your podcast, then this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Verity Songon, podcast manager, launch strategist, and host of a Top 100 podcast. I'm really excited to have you here, so without further ado, let's dive into the episode.
Hello. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Lazy Girl's Guide to Podcasting. And finally, it is here. Podcasts for YouTube. You've probably heard this talked about a lot in the news recently. And April 2023, YouTube have announced that you can now listen to podcasts on YouTube Music. There is one catch at this present moment in time, and that is that this new feature is currently only available in the USA and is on a gradual rollout. So even if you're in America, you might not have access to this feature yet. However, anyone can list a playlist as a podcast on YouTube itself. So want to explore that in this episode. First of all, what is YouTube Music? YouTube Music was launched in 2015 and is a music streaming service where users can listen to songs and albums in either a free or premium plan. In 2022 alone, YouTube Music recorded an incredible 80 million subscribers. Not bad, right? YouTube Music is owned by YouTube and therefore by Google, and it's important to remember the impact of these two companies. That is that they are the two largest search engines in the world, meaning that getting your podcast optimized for SEO and listened on either of these is a big deal because it'll help you reach a larger audience. YouTube Music is currently available in over 100 countries. So what are the benefits of listing your podcast on YouTube Music? Well, the biggest benefit of this new feature for podcasters is that it gives you yet another way of reaching a new audience. In fact, if you use a platform such as repurpose.io, you can publish your podcast episodes onto YouTube with very little effort on your part. To me, this is an absolute no-brainer. Even if you're recording video for your podcast, even if you're not recording video for your podcast, you can easily automate a static waveform video with something like repurpose.io and give yourself the chance of having your podcast titles discovered by potential new listeners and fans on YouTube. I did say that podcasts on YouTube Music aren't globally available, but yes, this is a yet. They aren't globally available on YouTube Music yet. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the ability to have your podcast on YouTube Music because it isn't globally available as yet. In my opinion, you should get your podcast listed in as many locations as possible. Why? Because you never know who will be listening where and who might not have discovered your podcast content otherwise. And remember, YouTube Music has 80 million subscribers as of September 2022. Looking at their year-on-year trajectories, this will only continue to increase. And let's face it, that is a lot of people that you have got the potential to get your podcast in front of. So how do you list a playlist as a podcast on YouTube? It's really, really simple. What you need to do is go into YouTube Studio and click Content in the left-hand menu, click on Playlists along the top menu, and then hover over the playlist and you'll see 3 vertical dots which you need to click on, and then simply select podcast from that and you are done. It is that easy. You are literally just going into your YouTube account, going to your YouTube Studio, finding the content that you've already uploaded for your podcast, and as I said, just selecting that playlist as a podcast. So how do you track podcast downloads on YouTube? At this time, listing a podcast on YouTube doesn't seem to come with the same ability to connect YouTube to a podcast hosting platform such as Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Anchor, etc. In fact, if you're uploading your content to a podcast playlist, there can be actually debate as to whether or not it's technically a podcast, but we'll leave that conversation for another day. Because of the inability to connect YouTube Music to an online hosting podcast platform, your watch time and views won't automatically be added to your download numbers and won't affect how your podcast ranks in podcast directories and in charts as well. Instead, it'll be up to you to keep track of those podcast views and watch time in YouTube and decide if you want to add those numbers to your podcast download stats or not. It might sound a little confusing at this stage, but I'm hoping that eventually we will see some sort of integration between YouTube and podcast hosting platforms to make it easier to track download stats all in one place. So how do you listen to podcasts on YouTube Music? If you're already a YouTube Music user, accessing the new podcast feature is really easy. You just need to open the app, navigate to the Explore tab where you'll find a podcast option. And from there, you can browse and select the shows that you want to listen to. However, as I said earlier, currently, as of April and May 2023, YouTube Music is not globally available as yet, nor is listening to podcasts on them. So in conclusion, we are super excited about this new addition to YouTube Music. True, YouTube Music is not available globally yet, and the ability to listen to podcasts on YouTube Music is still being rolled out just in the USA at the time of recording and publishing this particular episode. However, as we've done with the Confident CEO podcast and also this podcast, The Lazy Girl's Guide to Podcasting, we would recommend jumping on the opportunity to list your podcast playlist as a podcast on your YouTube channel and take advantage of the ability to grow your audience. And if you don't currently have a YouTube channel, don't start panicking and thinking that this is something that you need to do if you are completely overwhelmed with your workload and your workflow already. It's if you have already got a YouTube channel and you're already putting your content automatically onto YouTube from your podcast, then this is an additional thing that you might be able to do to help grow your audience, but it's not the be all and end all at the end of the day. I'm excited to hear what you think of this new feature. Are you going to be listing your podcast playlist on your YouTube channel as an actual podcast playlist? And if you already have, how has that helped to grow your audience? Don't forget to get in contact and let me know either via Instagram or Twitter at VeritySongon. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Lazy Girl's Guide to Podcasting. If you loved this episode, I think you'll love being on my email newsletter list where I send out weekly podcasting tips to help you create, host and grow a podcast that you love. To join, go to veritysongon.com/newsletter or hit the link in the show notes. Until next time, happy podcasting.